Hi, my name is Eva Steiner and this is my project Psychotherapists Around the Globe. I am interviewing the psychotherapists around the world and asking them the same 8 questions. I am wondering how mental health profession is in their country. Today we are going to... Thank you for taking your time and doing this interview with me. Before we start, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Marina Sabolova and I'm a qualified counselor and psychotherapist. I was born in Slovakia and moved to England at the age of 20. I've now been living here for over 19 years.
Tell me a little bit about your culture. What is some holiday or tradition that your country celebrates? And if your culture would be an emotion, what emotion would it be?
English culture is full of history and traditions. Popular holidays include Christmas, where families come together to exchange gifts and enjoy festive meals. Also Easter, which symbolizes new beginnings and often involves chocolate eggs. And a bonfire night on 5th of November, where people light fireworks and bonfires to remember the gunpowder plot. Other traditions include enjoying afternoon tea and Sunday roast dinners.
What are Sunday roast dinners?
Sunday roast dinners is the meal, so roasted potatoes with roasted veg, some gravy and meat. Yeah, so if English culture were an emotion, it might be warm but reserved. What I mean being polite, caring and little formal.
How these two emotions shows in everyday life.
For example, because I can see that from my country where I grew up. When I moved here, I could see that difference, that people are kind of very polite, more kind of, they want to be more formal. But maybe, when you're a friend or in family, it works a bit different. It really depends on people, I would say. Maybe being less open, they are gonna say, oh yeah, it's okay. Very common in England is to ask, are you okay? Which usually when you meet someone and you said, yes, I am okay, even though you're not okay. In therapy session, it is a bit different. And that's why I love my job, because when I ask a client, oh, how are you? And they just, I really feel rubbish. I feel like they're more open. They're still very polite, but more open in therapy session, maybe less reserved.
How did you become a psychotherapist and what is your therapeutic approach?
I became a psychotherapist by completing a BS in psychology and counseling and postgraduate diploma in counseling and psychotherapy. Also, I have masters in counseling and psychotherapy. I combine academic learning with counseling placement for 2 years, and then I became a qualified counselor. My therapeutic approach is integrative, which means I use methods from different types of therapy, depending on what suits the client best. So, for example, I use humanistic therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, or psychodynamic therapy.
And you did the studies a little bit in Slovakia and a little bit in UK, or everything in the UK?
Everything in England. So that's been 7 years altogether with my master's.
And do you need to be a psychologist to be a psychotherapist, or can you go directly to the psychotherapeutic direction and then become a psychotherapist?
I studied over 8-9 years ago. That's when I finished my studies. A lot has changed. So years ago, it was after doing a BSc in psychology and counseling, I actually could decide if I want to be a psychologist. That means I would do a doctorate or PhD or master's. But at that time, doctorate was obviously compulsory to do. I was the last year when I needed to do university. I needed to do higher levels to become a qualified counselor and psychotherapist. Now you can do lower levels and you can become qualified therapist. So it's a bit easier to get your way to be qualified now.
What do you mean by lower levels? Like a bachelor of psychology you need, or you need any type of bachelor?
Yes. So in the past, obviously, you had to go to university. Now there's just some courses, counseling courses. So we're talking about maybe level 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So you don't need to go to university to become a psychotherapist.
And in that case, the latter, can you work in public settings or you can only work privately?
Yes, so you can work obviously in private settings once you qualified and you registered with registration body. So in England, there's 4 bodies, counselors registration body, and once you registered with them, you can go and practice.
How society looks upon psychotherapy or any psychological help?
In England, therapy is becoming more accepted, especially since the pandemic raised awareness about mental health. Younger people and many workplaces see therapy as normal and helpful. The NHS offers therapy, but waiting times can be long, so private therapy is also popular for quicker and more specialized help. If you would like to access therapy through your GP, through your doctor, the waiting list is very long. So that's why a lot of people, they do decide to look for private therapists, which they can access service within maybe a couple of days or hours with some therapists.
Is there any mental health stigma?
There's definitely some stigma, but I do work with clients and I'm seeing people who are looking for support, so they're more open to it. I can see younger generation, they're more open. Even though I know some clients, they find difficult to open up or talk about, but they always try. Older generation, I can see they kind of questioning, why I'm here? Why do I need this help? I should be feeling okay. And when they get into that stage of realization, that's when they struggle, because obviously they're coming to therapy many times they're just looking for coping strategies, but maybe they're less aware of this process of what can happen in the session, and that can be sometimes scary.
What is your society teaching about child-parent relationship, and whether this value of society also influence how you design your interventions as a therapist?
English society values relationships between parents and children that focus on respect, communication, and emotional support. Parents try to guide their children while also encouraging them to be independent. As a therapist, I often design family-focused interventions based on these values and helping families improve communication and understand each other.
And for example, if an adult client would come to you and say, I don't want to see my parents anymore, I want to cut contact with them, how would you approach as a therapist, and how would society look upon such a request?
I would explore a bit more what is going on for the client. I don't feel society would judge that person. So in the therapy, the main focus is on the client and whatever they decide. So just exploring a bit more about how they feel.
And you feel like the society wouldn't judge somebody that doesn't want to contact with their parents, you said?
It's really hard to say. Maybe there would be some people who would judge, or they would feel sorry, or, we all have that. But I think we're getting into that understanding that if something is not working, or someone is not kind to you, or it's harmful, or you're not happy in this friendship or relationship, why would you stay? So I think people do understand much better now.
What are the learned beliefs regarding client-therapist relationship, and can the relationship continue outside the therapy once the therapy process is over?
In England, the relationship between a client and therapist is professional but supportive. Therapists follow guidelines which set clear boundaries to protect clients, and after therapy ends, keeping in touch socially is not allowed, as it can be confuse roles and harm the therapeutic process. So maintaining really strong boundaries is very important to ensure trust and professionalism.
And for example, if the therapist is crossing the line, maybe sexually approaching the client, is there any institution or law where the client can turn to?
Yes, of course. If a client wishes to complain, they can contact the counselor's registration body. So the process typically involves confirming membership, review the process, and submitting the complaint. The registration body will review the complaint and take appropriate action based on their ethical guidelines. Each organization has its own complaints process. Clients can find details on their website and actually how to raise concerns.
Is supervision a must for a therapist in your country?
Yes, supervision is a must for therapists in England, especially for those who follow guidelines. So therapists meet with a supervisor usually once a month to reflect on their work and make sure they are practicing ethically and effectively. Yeah, so supervision support both the therapist and the client.
So basically they are checking that you took the supervision or not.
So I'm registered with BACP, British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. So what they do, sometimes they do send you a letter to provide details of your supervision or personal development. Yeah, and that's when you have to actually prove what you have done.
And do you need to extend this registration or this license every year or like every couple of years?
Yes, every year. You pay membership every year.
What are the most common complaints that the client comes to therapy for?
I would say I work with a lot of clients experiencing anxiety. So that can be worrying too much or feeling nervous in social situations. Low mood and depression often link to stress or life challenges, and relationship problems, whether with family, partners, or at work. So therapy provides a safe space to talk and find solutions sometimes.
If you would share one tool, belief, or approach that is a must-have for you as a therapist, what would that be?
Empathy. Empathy is my most important tool as a therapist because it helps me understand how my client feel and what they are going through. So when clients feel understood and supported, they feel safe enough to open up and work on their challenges. And also empathy builds trust and a connection, which are essential for healing and growth.